r/AskReddit. I used to sort through donations at Goodwill. What's the strangest thing you've found in a thrift shop? I'll start. I processed donations for a year and a half, and found so many strange items. People will donate literally anything. Used diapers. Sure. Bags of trash. All the time. Toys. You betcha. I found, and bought for $19.99, a painting of two men riding through the Old West on horses with revolvers being chased by a somewhat distant group of lawmen or bandits. The best part, the two men are Tupac and Bob Marley. Found in Slidell, Louisiana. I'll try to get a picture up. It's at my friend's apartment now. I totally forgot about it until this post. TLDR, a painting of Bob Marley and Tupac in the Old West. I know a guy that bought a 1957 Fender Stratocaster at a Goodwill for $20. The guy at the counter apologized to him because it had two broken strings. He said his hands were shaking as he gave the guy the money. That crap never happens to me. My parents owned a rather large antique store in New Orleans for most of my life. Obviously they couldn't be an expert on everything they sold, so they would just kind of guess a price on some stuff. Occasionally someone would walk up to the counter and practically throw money at my parents. Hands shaking like you said, no negotiation, no we'll take $5 off the price, nothing. So my dad would take their money, give them a receipt and say okay, now that you own it, how much is it really worth? I want to hear some stories. Specifics. The biggest two, a guy came in with a bunch of watches, like 50 of them, that he said he had bought at an estate sale. He was very honest and said he had looked up most of them and they really weren't worth anything much, so my parents gave him $500, or something like that, for the box. They in turn also looked up a bunch of them and they turned out to just be costume crap, so they put a sign on the box $40 for any watch. It turned out they all were crap, except for one Rolex that both the guy and my parents had missed. Another was a very nice sterling silver tea service, which are pretty uncommon to begin with, completely and totally unmarked. So my parents put $15,000 on it, they bought for about $9,000 I think. A guy comes in and asks if he gives them $3,000 cash right now, if they'll hold it until tomorrow. My parents agree. He comes back a few hours later, that same afternoon, and takes some pictures of it. The guy shows up the next afternoon with a cashier's check for the balance. As him and my parents are wrapping it up, a Brinks truck pulls up and a guy gets out and loads the tea service into the truck. My parents are like WTF and the guy says I have a buyer lined up that wants to pay $1.2 million for it but they wish to remain anonymous and I really don't want to tell you anything else about it. I would really like to know the history behind that tea service. My dad's friend when he was a kid used to climb around in the Goodwill bins because he was small enough to fit inside. He found a spear gun in a bin once, complete with extra spears. This was a legit one for spearing sharks I'm guessing. He said because of his age he could barely pull back the bands to arm it. After he shot a spear into his garage door his mother saw it and took it away from him. I bought some second-hand shorts and found a crumpled $100 bill in the pocket. Best day ever. When I was about 8, I got $1 to spend at the thrift store. I found a small wooden doll chair that I liked, and bought it for like 25 cents. Once I got it home, I saw that my own last name was etched into the bottom of the chair. Turned out my uncle had made it in woodworking shop when he was a kid. It had been sold at a garage sale, then eventually ended up at the thrift shop. I found a little trophy with Best Float 1969 engraved on it. It has sat on top of every toilet I've had for the last 10 years. I found a taxidermic frog sitting in a tiny rocking chair. I bought it and mailed it to a friend. She has to keep it. It was a gift. I found a Nintendo Entertainment System with a bunch of games duct taped to the top. Inside the cartridge slot was a Half-Life CD and a few grams of weed. I think this begs the question, did you smoke it? Actually, I didn't. I don't plan to partake upon the consumption of trees for a few more years, so I gave it to my stoner friend. While under its effects, he bolted a X-swing to his ceiling, dipped his feet in various paint buckets, and painted his room with his feet while swinging around. I think those trees were laced with something. I collect Cabbage Patch Kids, a type of doll that was very popular in the 1980s, although they still make them today. I used to stop by the thrift store pretty often to check their toy section for Cabbage Patches, and one day I found a boy Cabbage Patch with a bow in his hair, wearing a backwards dress that was so long in the front it covered his feet. He had a cape on that matched the dress which covered his feet from the back as well. He looked good, and even though the clothes were odd, more than 50% of the Cabbage Patch I find at thrift stores are naked, so any clothes are great. I actually spend far more on doll clothes than I do on the dolls themselves. Anyway, I brought the little guy home and pulled his dress up to check the signature on his butt, because I can tell by the color of the signature what year he was made. What I found freaked me the hell out. The doll's legs were soaked in a dark red, brownish stuff. It was clearly blood. I tried to tell myself it wasn't blood, but I knew it was. I put the doll in the bathtub, put on some gloves, and started to scrub him. I got most of the blood out. I still have the doll, but he sits on the shelf. I don't want to touch him. I don't know how he got bloody, or why someone would give a blood-soaked doll to a thrift store. Once found the display model of a hoodie at a thrift store. Instead of being a solid color, or having some standard design, it was printed with the advertising shtick. On the left breast pocket area it has an arrow pointing up and the word stitched in drawstring doesn't get lost on the other side. An arrow pointing in, no stick zipper anti-fuzz inliner deep pockets antimicrobial fabric. I was a manager of Goodwill for a while. I got a few good donations, the best being a taser gun. Didn't get put up for sale, obviously. A purse with an 1/8 ounce of weed, straight into my pocket. Owls. We got a U-Haul truck, filled with owl-themed decorations. And then the adult toys. We received so many adult toys. Right before I started working at that store, they had been donated a box which contained 3 live riot grenades. They called the police to dispose of them, who then cleared the building before they would even handle them. Not really strange, but I found $200 stuffed into a little ceramic bear. Yes, I took the money and bought the bear, in that order. A human finger. In the pocket of a pair of pants. Which my uncle had already tried on. I am not sure how true this story is. My uncle's friend, let's call him Hank, had an old neighbor that was moving, and told him that if he wanted to come by and take a look at anything in his garage, he would give him a good deal to lighten his load. In the garage was an old engine block, and a beat-up broken down Harley Davidson motorcycle amongst other junk. He offered the man $400 for the Harley, and the man said that he would give it to him for $200 if he took the engine block with him. Hank took the bike, wheeled it over to his house, while disposing of the engine block with some buddies. He tried to find a VIN number on the bike to identify the model, but he can't find anything. Usually the VIN numbers are in a universal spot on a bike, but the only letters/numbers that he found were EP17 under the seat. He calls Harley Davidson and asks them if they know where he could find a VIN, or if they knew anything about the EP17. The second he said EP17, the man on the phone told him that they were going to send a representative down to take a look at the bike. A man came down dressed pretty casually in jeans and a t-shirt. He took a look at the bike and simply asked Hank how much he purchased the bike for. Hank told him he got it for $200. The man apparently made a phone call and came back and offered Hank $20,000 for it. Hank demanded to know what EP17 was, but the man played dumb and said that there is a small chance it was rare military model or something, but they were unsure. They offered this amount on the spot, telling him it very well could be a replica and be worth nothing. Knowing he could have something special, Hank worked it up to $50,000 and the man went to a bank and returned 20 minutes later with a manila envelope with $50,000 in fresh bundles of $10,000 each. After happily giving him the money, the man had flatbed truck waiting that took the bike away. When Hank went to go give him the keys, the man told him to keep them. Before he hopped in his car to take off, Hank asked the man why he didn't want the keys. The man just responded, "This bike won't be needing a key." That bike now sits in an Harley Davidson museum amongst 16 other custom-made bikes, personally manufactured for Elvis Presley. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the content, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel for more edit videos like this. Don't forget to smash that like button and stay crispy, guys.